So we're going to jump right into it. And we're going to start with a story that, it's making some headlines, not major headlines, and that is, clashes, airstrikes, all the tensions, however you want to put it, between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Serious uptick there in hostilities between the two countries, and a lot of people being caught in the crossfire. So a lot to discuss here in terms of that, and we are very happy to be joined here on the show once again by Obaidullah Baheer, who is a political commentator and lecturer at the American University of Afghanistan. Obaidullah, thanks so much for being back with us.
Always happy to be here. It's a volatile situation, Eugene. Depends on how much time you have to break it down, but we can go in reverse with what has transpired. Yesterday, there was a bombing in Kandahar city, one of the biggest cities in the country, where we had 17 civilians killed, more than 350 injured. We had multiple bombings that happened in Kabul city, the capital. Now, this was the second incident of bombing in Kabul. The first one was done a few days prior to that. This was the first time in the history of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations where Pakistan directly hit the capital of Afghanistan. So the casualties from just yesterday's strikes on Kabul and Kandahar are 23 civilians dead, more than 550. The bombing in daily model of taking matters into their own hands, they perceive to be a threat. So the context of why we got here is, so for your viewers, the Afghan Taliban, or the Taliban, the OGs, they took over Afghanistan in 2021 in August. They've been fighting the U.S. occupation for 20 years. After a peace deal signed between them and the United States, they were going to come to power politically, but they militarily took over the country with a blitzkrieg that was quite effective, 11 days, which was then later outdone by the Syrians. But those are the Taliban that rule Afghanistan. Now, there's another entity called the Pakistani Taliban, the TTP, right? Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now, these are a group of people who live within the frontier regions between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And those people were encouraged at that time by the intelligence agencies and the establishment of Pakistan to harbor the Afghan Taliban while they were fighting the Americans. Because it was interesting, there were Pakistani generals that would say, we defeated America with the help of America, because they were playing both sides. They were taking funds from the United States while supporting the Taliban to have a controlled chaos within Afghanistan. And the thing is, in Pakistan, for those of you who are familiar with the history of Pakistan, since its 78 years of foundation, vast majority of it has been under military rule. Even now, the civilian government says that it is under a hybrid rule, which in essence means that the army is in charge. And that means you really have to create a Schmittian world of like universal enmity. You constantly have political enemies that you have to fight, and there's a siege mentality that is constantly fed to the citizens. So the TTP is just one of the many groups that the Pakistani establishment is currently fighting. They're also fighting Baloch separatists who are within another province in Balochistan. They're asking to be separated from Pakistan. There's a Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. Those are a religious zealot group who are asking for more vocal stances on Palestine. They're being prosecuted. So there's a lot of mess happening in Pakistan. But what Pakistan constantly keeps doing is saying that the TTP, and while it's hitting military targets within Pakistan, they keep blaming Afghanistan for it. They keep blaming Afghanistan for harboring the TTP. Now, it's quite interesting because exactly 4 years ago, before the Taliban took over, the Afghan government of the time constantly used to say, Pakistan is harboring the Afghan Taliban. Why are they doing that? And the Pakistani establishment's response would always be, well, have you even looked at how large the border between us is? It's so difficult to police. It's mountainous and all of that. So they would throw that excuse. However, now when they hear it back from the Afghan Taliban, it isn't very pleasant. And they constantly expect the Afghan Taliban to make an enemy out of the Taliban within Pakistan. And they started the first attack in Kabul, trying to hit the leader of the TTP. They claimed he was traveling in Kabul. So it's interesting. They were trying to pull an Osama bin Laden on us, where the United States commits an operation deep in the heartland of Pakistan. And basically, the Pakistani regime is caught with their pants down. And they tried to do that with Kabul a few days ago. However, a voice clip emerges. The leader of the TTP says he's not in Afghanistan. He is in the frontier region. He's alive. He was never hit. But just that theatric led to retaliation from the Taliban across the border, because this wasn't the first time the Pakistanis were bombing Afghan territory, violating Afghan sovereignty. And look, at the end of it, okay, politics aside, when you intentionally hit civilians, when you bomb some of the most populated areas of a city, including Taimani, which is like an extreme, like I wouldn't even want to drive through that area during rush hour, and you hit it during rush hour, and you hit an oil tanker, and you hit a religious school. There are videos out there that show people with their bones out and screaming on the roadside. I mean, and the fact that the world really didn't blink twice about it also shows you that there's this we've talked about this before. There's a hierarchy of death, and I know you're not happy with the situation, political situation in Afghanistan, but why does the common Afghan life and death matter so little?
No, I think it's a great point, and I think it speaks to a deeper reality. I think that we have mentioned in terms of this hierarchy of death and who it is, and I think especially in the West, the conception of Afghanistan, and I guess the other aspect of this that people are talking about is sort of the quote unquote sort of geopolitics. I mean, this is happening as the Afghan foreign minister is in India, and the U.S. is trying to get Bagram Air Force Base, or at least Trump is saying that in Oval Office speeches, and I'm sure, as you've seen, many different theories circulating about who and what regional and international powers may or may not be behind this or that machination. And I wonder how you feel this fits into the overall reality of sort of post-Taliban returning to power, regional and international politics for Afghanistan.
I mean, look, Trump is amazing in his revisionist memory. He makes stuff up, and I mean, he just says whatever he heard in the last meeting he was in, so the next shiny thing just distracts him. And hopefully, if we don't mention Bagram long enough, he'll forget that it exists. It's not like he knows where it is to begin with. But saying that, you have to realize that this whole conversation regarding Bagram just stemmed out of nowhere. It had no factual truth to it. And the fact that the Doha deal that the Trump administration signed with the Taliban says that there will be no foreign troops within Afghanistan. So it's suddenly Trump is hit by Biden's amnesia, and forgets that he had signed a deal that said they would not have foreign troops, which includes Bagram as well. And the thing is that the Chinese and the Russians will not be happy, will not allow U.S. military presence so close to their borders anymore. This isn't 2001 anymore. So that discussion aside, but then also with the current politics between Pakistan and India, I mean, look, we're the third neighbor that Pakistan has militarily engaged with in the past 22 months. They've had military hostilities with Iran, with India, and now with us, right? I mean, Jeffrey Sachs says when you're constantly engaged in war, then your policy is war. It's not diplomacy, So the war being a policy there is extremely problematic. There are matters, even if the TTP is a concern, even if we take their assumption or their allegation that TTP operates within Afghanistan or their members within Afghanistan, there needs to be a dialogue, right, to solve these matters. I mean, tell me how this makes sense, Eugene. You're saying the Afghan Taliban aren't helping me enough with the TTP. So how about I drop bombs on their cities? Because somehow that will magically make them want to help me. You're increasing the cost of compliance from the Taliban. Once you're dropping bombs and killing civilians, the Taliban look horribly weak if they concede to your demands, So this is like flipping the table over when you don't like the game, and that doesn't make sense politically speaking. And ultimately, when you're hitting civilians, what you're doing is regimes change. The Taliban might not be around, the Pakistani governments might change, but once you've poisoned this well between people, When people start seeing the other person as an enemy, that doesn't go away soon, and it's not like we can magically lift our roots and march somewhere else on the globe and just become someone else's neighbor, right? This whole irrationality, and Eugene, when we teach foreign policy, a very important model is the rational actor model. So if you and I are engaging with each other, it's based on, I assume rationality on your part and you assume it on my end. But when both sides are irrational, it constantly leads to escalation. We're going to go into the abyss, right? And who pays the ultimate price? It's the soldiers on the Pakistan side, it's the civilians on the Afghan side. And why? Why are we here? Why is there no larger sense of this immediate victory, the bravado that's involved, the military might and the muscle flex? But what then? Like the whole argument of there are no winners to wars, there are only losers. That's what takes shape. So by the way, there has been a ceasefire declared. So yesterday, right after the bombing of both cities by Pakistan, there was a ceasefire agreed. The GCC countries, so the Gulf countries, intervened. Some say that the United States placed a call as well. I'm 100% sure it wasn't placed on the Afghan side. Maybe on the Pakistani side, the Chinese want it resolved. So they're supposed to meet in a day or two. The 48-hour ceasefire is still ongoing, but they're supposed to meet in Qatar and have this discussion face to face. I don't understand what exactly could be agreed upon, but at the core of it, there needs to be a respect for international law. There needs to be a respect for another nation's aerial sovereignty, territorial integrity. And if Pakistan does not pledge this, we'll constantly have a reignition of these conflicts and hostilities. And it does no one any good. And at the core of it, is a colonial line. It's a colonial separator where the British ages ago draw a line on the map and they say, this is India and this is Afghanistan, and they take away territory from Afghanistan. Then they give that territory to Pakistan, which is another state that they create. And somehow both sides have an issue with this delineation or demarcation, and it is at the core of it. But then there's also a lot of irrationality and specifically militaristic thinking on the Pakistan side that keeps bringing us to this point. Like, the point is, within the past 40 years, Pakistan has always aligned itself with anti-state elements in Afghanistan. So it's not the Taliban. Like, we can take them out of the equation. It's not the Taliban they have a problem with. They have a problem with every government that we've had for the past 40, 50 years. And then that begs the question, what is the plan? If you're never going to be happy, even this TTP, your own Hillary Clinton and others used to say that they're keeping snakes in their backyard. They're playing both sides. They're harboring extremist elements, and these chickens are going to come to roost someday. And when they are, then suddenly it's Afghanistan's problem. Suddenly Afghanistan needs to make compromise. And if they don't, we'll just punch down and hurt Afghan civilians. We don't have any aircraft. We don't have air defenses. So like, how macho does it make you look when you bomb my civilians? Like, you took up an empty sky and you're now happy that you have aerial dominance over a regime that has no air force, So it's just a very sad set of affairs. And again, the United States had a role to play in this, like, they were here for 20 years and they leave it a bigger mess than it was, So where was the whole slogan of nation building and reconstructing post-conflict? And you caused a conflict, left it in a conflict, and now you switch off, So we are busy with everything else and trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize while leaving this whole region as a mess.
No, absolutely. Well, I don't know if it's hubristic, but certainly imperialistic in terms of the way they move around the pieces on the board, regardless of what the consequences are. Well, a lot to watch, a lot to continue to follow here, many things to say. And as always, we really appreciate you, Obaidullah, giving us some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
My pleasure.